In the shadows of New York City, where corruption and power intertwine, there is a name whispered with both fear and reverence: Wilson Fisk, better known as the Kingpin. To the public eye, he is a wealthy philanthropist, a man who funds charities, builds schools, and claims to uplift the city from the filth of crime. But behind that facade lies a man forged by pain, rage, and an unrelenting hunger for control. The Kingpin is not a man who was simply born into darkness. He was molded by it, and he used every ounce of his suffering to carve a path toward absolute dominance. His story is one of tragedy and terror, a reminder that monsters are not always born from shadows, but from the cruel world around them. Wilson Fisk's early life was marked by brutality. He grew up in poverty, overshadowed by an abusive father who taught him that strength and intimidation were the only paths to respect. His father, a failed politician and a violent drunk, would often take out his frustrations on both Wilson and his mother. One of the most defining moments in young Fisk's life came when he was forced to commit an act of shocking violence to protect his mother, a moment that seared itself into his soul and cemented his belief that power is the only true currency in this world. That day, the child who was Wilson Fisk began his transformation into the man who would one day rule the underworld. As he grew, Fisk did not seek escape from his past, but rather embraced the lessons carved into him through suffering. He turned his immense physical size, once a source of ridicule, into a symbol of fear and respect. He trained his body and sharpened his mind, studying strategy, politics, and economics with the same intensity as he mastered combat. Unlike many crime lords who rose to power with brute force alone, Fisk was different. He combined ruthless intelligence with overwhelming physical dominance, making him a figure that could not easily be toppled. He was a man who understood the systems of the city, how politicians could be bought, how law enforcement could be swayed, and how public opinion could be manipulated. He didn't just want to rule the underworld. He wanted to rule the very heartbeat of New York itself. In time, Wilson Fisk shed the identity of a victim and rebuilt himself as a symbol of dominance. The Kingpin. From the shadows, he orchestrated a vast empire that extended into every corner of the city: drug trade, arms dealing, human trafficking, extortion, and political corruption. No deal was made without his influence. No crime was committed without his silent approval. The Kingpin made himself indispensable to both criminals and politicians alike, creating a web so complex that removing him seemed impossible. He was not simply a crime boss. He was the invisible hand guiding the city's destiny. But beneath the mountain of crime and power lies a man of contradictions. For all his cruelty, Fisk has moments of humanity that make him even more dangerous. His love for his wife, Vanessa, reveals the vulnerable heart buried beneath the layers of violence. She is his anchor, the one person who can calm the storm inside him, and yet her presence only strengthens his ambition. To protect her, to build the perfect world for her, Fisk is willing to burn the rest of the world to ashes. It is in this paradox, this mixture of ruthless tyranny and genuine affection, that the true terror of the Kingpin lies. He is not a man who seeks destruction for its own sake. He seeks order, control, and perfection, and in pursuit of that vision, there are no limits to what he will do. From the dark alleys of Hell's Kitchen to the gilded towers of Wall Street, Kingpin's shadow looms large. Heroes like Spider-Man and Daredevil have crossed his path, attempting to dismantle his empire. But Fisk is not easily broken. Every time he falls, he rises again, stronger, more cunning, more dangerous. His rise to power is not just a tale of crime, but of a man who turned his trauma into a weapon, who transformed his pain into an empire, and who built himself into the king of crime. Wilson Fisk is more than a villain. He is an institution, a reminder that the greatest threat to justice is not chaos, but the cold, calculated hand of order, twisted by ambition. From the shadows of Hell's Kitchen, Wilson Fisk grew into more than just a feared crime boss. His rise was not sudden, but carefully orchestrated, like a game of chess in which every piece moved according to his will. After years of clawing his way up through the ranks of New York's underworld, he established himself not just as a criminal, but as a king without a crown. Yet with power that rivaled the city's politicians and business magnates, Fisk's genius lay not only in brute force, but in strategy. He built an empire brick by brick, laundering his fortune through legitimate businesses, construction companies, art galleries, and real estate ventures. Each was a mask, a facade for the sprawling network of corruption. smuggling, and violence that funded his throne. What made him so dangerous was his ability to stand before the public as a philanthropist, a man of the people, while controlling a shadow empire with an iron fist. To the media, he could be Wilson Fisk, the respected entrepreneur, but to his enemies, he was the Kingpin, a man who would crush anyone who dared stand in his way. Yet despite his terrifying aura, Fisk's story was never just about power. It was also about obsession, fear, and an endless hunger to reshape the world into his vision of order. He despised chaos, and he despised the heroes who threatened the delicate balance of his rule. Daredevil, in particular, became the thorn in his side, a man in a mask who exposed Fisk's darkness for all to see. Their battles were not just physical but moral, a clash between Fisk's empire of intimidation and Daredevil's relentless pursuit of justice. In every confrontation, Fisk revealed his duality. He was not merely a monster but a man capable of great love and loyalty, especially to his wife Vanessa. She was his anchor, the one person who saw through the brutality to the vulnerable soul underneath. For her, Fisk sought redemption, even peace, but the world would not allow it. The cycle of crime, corruption, and bloodshed always pulled him back, like quicksand, swallowing him deeper into the abyss. Part of what made Fisk truly terrifying was his unpredictability. He could extend his hand as a benefactor one moment and shatter bones with his bare fists the next. He was no ordinary crime lord. He was a tactician, a manipulator, who understood both the boardroom and the back alleys. Those who underestimated him quickly learned that Kingpin was not just a title, it was destiny. Even as heroes rose against him, Spider-Man, Punisher, Daredevil, none could ever fully topple his empire. Each defeat only made him more dangerous, more ruthless. For Fisk, setbacks were never the end, only fuel for his return. And behind his broad frame and calm, calculating demeanor, burned a relentless will. The empire of Wilson Fisk had grown into a monolith of power, shadow, and influence. No longer confined to the back alleys of New York's underworld, Fisk had elevated himself into the realm of untouchable kings. His wealth poured into legitimate businesses, real estate, empires, and political campaigns. But beneath the polished veneer still beat the ruthless heart of a crime lord. Every skyscraper that bore his name stood as both a fortress and a warning. The Kingpin was everywhere, but absolute power always attracts enemies. Heroes like Spider-Man, Daredevil, and the Punisher waged relentless war against Fisk's operations. Each clash between Fisk and these vigilantes became a spectacle of brute strength versus unyielding will. Where others relied on weapons or superpowers, Fisk relied on his barrier mountain of raw muscle, disguised as fat, and his unparalleled cunning. He was not just a criminal boss, he was a strategist, a manipulator, a king who fought on his own throne. With Daredevil, the battles transcended mere physical conflict. They became a war of ideologies. Matt Murdock fought for justice within the boundaries of the law, while Fisk bent every law to his own will, proving that the system itself could be corrupted from within. Their war painted the streets of Hell's Kitchen in shadow and blood, echoing the eternal struggle between order and chaos. Spider-Man, with his youthful energy and unshakable moral compass, was another thorn in Fisk's empire. Fisk saw in Peter Parker not just an enemy, but a symbol of hope for the people he sought to control. Every time the wall-crawler foiled a scheme, Fisk doubled his efforts to crush him, not just physically, but spiritually, trying to prove that even heroes could be broken by the weight of fear and despair. And then there was the Punisher. Unlike the others, Frank Castle did not fight for redemption or justice. He fought for annihilation. His war against Fisk was personal, brutal, and endless. While others sought to dismantle Fisk's empire, Castle sought to burn it to ash. There, confrontations turned city blocks into battlefields, where Fisk's indomitable frame clashed against the relentless fury of the Punisher's arsenal. Yet, no matter how many times Fisk was brought down, he always returned. His fortune, his influence, and his sheer force of will ensured his survival. Even when imprisoned, he turned cells into command centers, manipulating guards, criminals, and politicians alike. From the shadows of Rikers Island to the bright lights of City Hall, Fisk remained a titan who could not be ignored. Through all of it, Wilson Fisk began to see himself not merely as a man, but as a necessary force. In his mind, New York was a beast that needed to be tamed, and only the Kingpin had the strength to leash it. To his enemies, he was a monster. To his followers, he was a savior. To himself, he was destiny incarnate. But destiny has a price. Every victory earned him another enemy. Every step toward control placed him further from redemption. The empire he built was no longer just about survival or wealth. It had become an obsession. He was not simply Wilson Fisk anymore. He was Kingpin, the immovable pillar of crime, power, and fear. And as the city trembled under his rule, the question loomed over every darkened rooftop and blood-stained alley: could even the mightiest heroes ever truly topple the Kingpin? Or had Wilson Fisk already won, not by strength alone, but by convincing the world that he was inevitable? In the dim corridors of New York's underworld, the name Wilson Fisk echoes like a thunderclap. The Kingpin is no longer just a man, he is a symbol of unyielding control. A monolith casting a shadow over every street, every alley, every whispered deal made in the night. Where others saw chaos, he carved order through fear. Where rivals plotted, he dismantled them with precision. The world had underestimated him once, but now, every hero who dared to oppose him knew the truth. The Kingpin was eternal. As time passed, Fisk's empire evolved beyond mere gangs and street-level operations. His tendrils spread into legitimate businesses, politics, real estate, and international connections that transformed him from crime boss into a shadow king. Behind closed doors, senators bent to his will, bankers laundered his fortune, judges looked the other way. His enemies often believed they had won when a warehouse was burned or a shipment seized. Yet Fisk would emerge untouched, wealthier, stronger, and more dangerous. Even the most powerful heroes realized that defeating Kingpin was not a matter of fists, but of dismantling a network so deeply rooted in society that it seemed impossible to uproot. And yet, beneath the mountain of power, there remained the boy who once suffered in silence, who endured abuse, ridicule, and hunger. Fisk never forgot the past that shaped him. For him, power was never luxury, it was survival. Every skyscraper he erected, every enemy crushed, every scheme he orchestrated was not merely ambition, it was vengeance against a world that once spat on him. His brutality was born not only from greed, but from an unrelenting desire to never be small again, to never bow to anyone. In that, his greatest strength was also his eternal curse. The Kingpin's legend grew with every confrontation. He clashed with Spider-Man, the wall-crawler who constantly disrupted his empire. He tested his strength against Captain America, proving he could match even the greatest of heroes blow for blow. Yet it was with Daredevil, the devil of Hell's Kitchen, that his story reached its darkest and most tragic peaks. Their war was personal, brutal, and ceaseless. Two titans locked in a cycle of vengeance that neither could escape. Daredevil sought justice. Fisk demanded respect. Both believed their cause was righteous, and in the fire of their endless struggle, the line between villain and victim blurred. Even when defeated, Fisk never stayed down. Jail cells could not hold him, scandals could not destroy him, and death itself seemed reluctant to take him. For every fall, there was a rise greater, sharper, more terrifying than before. Heroes might win battles, but Kingpin always won the war of endurance. He was not a fleeting adversary. He was a constant force, the immovable object against every unstoppable hero. The world may see Wilson Fisk as a monster, but he sees himself as its true ruler. Not a man of capes and costumes, but of steel will and unstoppable vision. In the grand tapestry of the Marvel Universe, villains rise and fall, empires burn, and heroes triumph. But somewhere in the shadows of New York, the Kingpin watches from his tower, patient and unshaken. Because Wilson Fisk is more than a criminal. He is the embodiment of power itself, and power endures.